Lurie Daniel Favors on SiriusXM's Urban View. We're talking powers and becomes action. You're going to hear the rustling of newspaper, folks, because I'm rustling my newspapers. I'm reading the Financial Times today. We have a weekend news update. And for those of you who are joining us in YouTube land, hi, YouTube, welcome. SiriusXM just heard a news clip where apparently JD Vance is having a really tough time because after that whole ass fiasco that he tried to pull at the Oval Office with the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, and Donald Trump, that was some straight up BS. And I wish that President Zelensky had at that moment done, as Dr. Carr said, got up and smacked the front out of that man. But he didn't do that because, he needs the money that the Americans are promising him in order to navigate this war. But you should know that as a result of that, Americans have elevated their protests. There have been protests happening all weekend long, and not just in response to Zelensky, but in response to what feels as though some sort of indication that this government is now led by a whole ass Russian operation. Pam Bondi, the attorney general, who is like a glorified personal injury lawyer who has been elevated, because we obviously understand why she was elevated, but whatever. We also know that in addition to how she looks like she's from Central Casting, she also had refused to push forward on investigations into allegations of fraud. I believe it was as against the Trump University. And she got a very substantive donation from folks in the Trump camp. And that investigation, when she was in Florida, went away. Whatever, that's another story for another day. But we are in a moment right now where Americans are like, oh, my Lord, we have elected somebody who does not have the best interest of this country at heart. And I thought we were electing somebody who was just going to harm the blacks and the migrants. But he's hurting me. So they're having their own moment of realization. But I wanted to just be clear. Do you guys remember the first time that Donald Trump got impeached? Do y'all remember that? And do y'all remember why Donald Trump got impeached? Because he was impeached twice. He's got 34 felony convictions and he was impeached twice. The first time he was impeached in Congress was because he did what? That's right. Refused to give Ukraine aid after they had been invaded by Russia because Donald Trump, wanted President Vladimir Zelensky to lie and talk a whole lot of shit about Joe Biden and help Donald Trump come up with fake information about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Remember all of that? That's why Donald Trump got impeached the first time. Because he was on some bullshit with Zelensky from before and was trying to get Zelensky to basically whole ass lie. And then when Zelensky was like, nah, son, we can't do that. Like, that's a whole ass lie. And I actually have some morals and some principles. And I'm trying to fight a whole ass war. And that's why Donald Trump got impeached the first time. So let us not be surprised that him and junior varsity cheerleader Vance decided to do a Tweedledee and Tweedledummer routine. Have you ever said thank you to America? The entitlement of these white, entitled, and incompetent people is just amazing. Oh, and shout out to all of you who have been using the WEI construct that yours truly, Lurie Daniel Favors, coined. White, entitled, and incompetent is what we should be using to describe people who have no qualifications, but who like to pretend that the only people who are unqualified are diversity, equity, and inclusion hires. That's what's happening as it pertains to this country's relationship or reaction to what happened in the Oval Office. But the rest of the world is also responding. All over Europe, leaders are talking about how they are in alignment with Zelensky. They're in alignment and they are very appalled at what's happening with America. However, there is also a recognition that, quite frankly, without American dollars, this is not going to go very well. According to the Financial Times, the UK Prime Minister has said that they are prepared to back the defense of Ukraine with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others. Pay attention to that part. He says Europe must do the heavy lifting, but effort must have strong U.S. backing. Well, I don't know if y'all got your heads in the European sand, but have you seen the American leadership? They are not going to help you in any substantive, meaningful way to support Ukraine because America now sides with Russia, according to the new leaders of the country. So there's that. I don't know what this is going to mean, but what we do know is that this is feeling much like a drumbeat towards a World War III. I am not a fan. This is going to be a problem because what we're also seeing is that recruitment in the military is low. And have you seen how they've been purging from the military the leadership that actually has the qualifications to make these sorts of decisions and to make these sort of assessments? They got rid of all of them and are replacing them with the ding-dong crew, the clown car crew of the Trump administration. I am concerned because what this is also going to mean is that if they should reinstitute a draft, whose kids you think they're taking? We got to pay attention. Elections have consequences. Also, on the home front for America is the reality that we may no longer have a weather service. I am one of those people who, when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I do is I thank the good Lord and Mother, Father, God for allowing me to see another day. I thank my ancestors for the guidance that they are going to provide for me. And then after I have, done some of those things, I maybe chant, I maybe pray, do a little bit of yoga, what have you, I check my weather app because I got to know how to prepare myself and my family, my children to go outside. And when I check the weather app, I expect to see accurate information. Well, did you know that they're firing NOAA? And by NOAA, I mean the people who work at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. These are people who use these satellites in the sky that I personally do not have one of. Because remember, the reason we have a government do things at the national scale is because we as individuals don't have the capacity to do things on an individual scale. So, for example, we were just talking with Dr. Oh, hold on. What was his name? What was the name of our guest that we just had? Dr. James Rogers. Yes. We were just talking with Dr. James Rogers from the Consumer Affairs, from Consumer Reports. And Consumer Reports put out a press release last week. I don't know if you guys saw it. We're tweeting it out and putting it out on Blue Sky. But Consumer Reports put out a report last week that said their tests of synthetic braiding hair found cancer-causing agents in all the products. All the products. One of the things that Dr. Rogers said to us was that in this current regulatory reality where the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is not getting the support that it needs, they are firing people left, right, and center from the Food and Drug Administration. We, the people, can no longer rely on the Food and Drug Administration to do its basic functions, like make sure that when I go down to the beauty supply store and pick up a pack of hair, I'm not picking up a pack of cancer that I'm going to put on my head and my daughter's head or my son's head or whoever's getting the hairstyle in my household. But we no longer have a Food and Drug Administration under the Trump administration because remember, under Project 2025 America, they don't like agencies. They don't like federal agencies. They want everything to be private, which is why over a year ago, when I began talking about the fact that part of Project 2025 was also an effort to get rid of the federal agency that provides us with nationalized weather service, people said, why would they do that? We need the weather apps. Why would you do that? The meteorologists need that information. Well, saints, caints, and ain'ts, the reason the folks in Project 2025 don't want us to have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association as an agency anymore is because they believe that information, which our government gets from satellites that neither you nor I can afford, but together as a country, we can afford to have these satellites. And those satellites provide information about the weather patterns, not just over our little country, but over the entire world. Well, the Project 2025 people, your new president believes that information should be privatized. And by privatized, they mean you should have to pay for it. We learned over the weekend that according to PBS, thank God we still have a PBS. Don't know how long that's going to last. But according to PBS, the Trump administration has fired workers from U.S. weather and oceans agencies. And this is going to cause a direct risk to our lives, to the economy. And this is something that I'm not just pulling out the side of my neck and saying it. This is what the former agency heads are warning about. The people who were in charge of this agency who are no longer there. The only vested interest they have is the vested interest in making sure we're not all slaughtered to death by the next hurricane or tornado or fire-nado, which is apparently a new thing that can happen in this era of climate change. According to the report, the Federal Weather and Oceans Agency touches our lives in unnoticed ways, and so massive firings there will likely cause needless deaths and big hits to the American economy. They said the first round of firing started on Thursday at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is the governmental agency that monitors, pay attention, it monitors the oceans, it monitors the atmospheres where the storms roam and space, and it puts out hundreds of products daily. Those products are pieces of information that say, hey, there's a hurricane coming. You might want to batten down. Hey, there's a tornado on the way. Might be bad. Or hey, there are some really strong winds that, considering that are going to be blowing over these very dry conditions in, say, I don't know, Los Angeles, might create firestorms with the weathers or with the power of hurricane and tornado force winds. So you're going to have this new thing called fire-nados. All of that information is considered a product that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration puts out that we all rely upon. And those products are consumed by 96% of American households. And now those products are no longer going to be available to us because they are firing and getting rid of the people who work at NOAA because somebody has a vested interest in satellite ownership. Who could that be? Who could it be? Who is it that wants to own all the satellites or who actually does own all the satellites? Could that be Elongated muskrat? Elongated muskrat, which owns Starlink and a whole lot of satellites, stands to profit a whole freaking lot if the federal government is no longer providing the services that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration provides. Because if the government isn't going to provide it for all of us based on our tax dollars, and elongated muskrat gets to be the only game in town and then has to be paid for it, do you know how many hundreds of billions of dollars that man is going to be fleecing from the American economy? I tell you, it's going to be significant. We've also seen that elongated muskrat and his efforts at the Dogey agency, that they like to call Doge, I like to call it the Dogey agency. They are all to essentially ensure that contracts that were already in place, like Verizon had a whole ass contract, according to the reports, with the federal government to the tune of a pretty penny already in place, ink already dry. Them contracts were signed long ago. Well, elongated muskrat and the lost flying monkey boys of the Confederacy, who are now infiltrating Doge. And did you know that some of the lost boys of the Flying Monkeys Confederacy, they also have been linked to criminal gang activity in connection with Russian hacking teams? I don't know. Have I mentioned that it feels like the Americans have been taken over by the Russians? As a kid from Gen X who watched countless G.I. Joe films and cartoons where the Russians were the bad guys, it's kind of surreal. It's kind of surreal. But yeah, they're also canceling contracts or attempting to cancel contracts with private industry right now so that elongated muskrat can scoop it all up to himself. Scoop it all up to himself. In addition to that, we're also learning that when you deport people from the country en masse who are tied to in very particular ways to key industries, that it's going to have a negative impact on the industry. Once again, according to the Financial Times, which you can see here, I'm reading an article that says the housing market is stagnating as rates and tariff fears delay home renovations. Now, what do home renovations have to do with mass deportations? Could it be because a significant portion of the people who labor in the home construction industry are also a part of the population that has got a bullseye on its back for mass deportations? Yes, indeed it is. According to the reports, not only are we seeing shares and the value dropping on Friday night in the latest earnings reports from a variety of companies that are connected to the home building industry, what we're also seeing is that we still have high interest rates because the Fed has said we're not going to cut the interest rates as much as Donald Trump wants us to cut the interest rates because we're a little concerned about these tariffs and have the overall impact on the economy. We're also seeing that residential remodeling and home construction comprise about 4% of the United States GDP, our gross domestic product. And these industries have been hit very hard by the decision to keep interest rates higher for longer. But we have a decision to keep interest rates higher for longer because you got this wild ass orange mango Mussolini talking about tariffs all the damn time. And as a reminder, folks, tariffs are not something that other people pay. Tariffs are fees that are added onto the products that are imported into the country, that when we buy those products, the prices are going to be elevated and we're going to pay that increase because that's how tariffs work. Well, according to the reports, what we're also seeing is that there are concerns because undocumented workers are so connected to the industry, the construction industry. They're concerned because so many people have stopped showing up for work, have stopped coming out to the fields to pick the fruit, the vegetables, and all the things that we rely upon, have stopped coming out to the dairy farms and milking the cows and gathering the eggs. Also because of bird flu, also because we've had to kill millions of animals in this country because of this bird flu, which is hopping and skipping into multiple different species, including rats now. And I don't know about you, but as somebody who has lived in New York City for a very long time, have you seen how quickly rats can reproduce and spread disease? Oh, and speaking of disease, did you hear about measles, mumps, and rubella? Because it isn't just the measles outbreak that we now have in Texas, my saints, my kinks, and my aunts. Also, rubella has entered the chat. And our ding-dong-alicious head of Health and Human Services, Robert the Fool Kennedy Jr., has decided that, well, it's totally okay that we have all of this happening in terms of measles outbreaks because measles outbreaks are very normal and people dying from them are too. Haven't had somebody die from a measles outbreak in over a decade. You know why? Because measles is preventable. It's a whole ass vaccine that will prevent you from getting access to measles. But what's happening is we have these communities in the state of Texas, really all across the country, that have fallen in love with the trad wife life, and who are getting their medical advice from Facebook groups. Facebook groups where you joined the Facebook group because they're going to teach you how to make jam. You join the Facebook group because they're going to teach you how to quilt. And then all of a sudden you're getting mysterious health advice and vaccine prohibition advice from people who make jam. And then you believe it. And then you do stupid things like have measles parties where you hear somebody having a measles. And so you send your kids over there to get the measles. And it's not like the chicken pox, folks. Yes, my people did that when it came to the chicken pox. And by my people, I mean my family. Like we did do that during the chicken pox when I was a little kid. All of us had the chicken pox at the same time. Measles ain't that. You could die. And technically, I think you can die from the chicken pox as well. I don't know what our parents were doing in the 80s. This is what was happening in the 80s because we didn't know no better. We know better now. And there are whole ass communities being infected with measles unnecessarily because people are getting their medical advice from Facebook groups where they learn how to make jam. Anyway, final thing I want to get to. How'd y'all do for Friday in the boycott? I asked my audience this earlier. I did pretty good, pretty well. I was very happy about not spending any money on Friday. My household, we did it together. My daughter was like, "Can you send me some money?" I was like, "Nope, you ain't getting no money. Not today, not today." But I did want to quickly mention that I did, I said this at the top of the show to the Urban View audience. I saw some people who were like kind of snarky about the boycott. I'm like, if you're not going to boycott, that's fine, but don't be snarky about it. Particularly when one of the biggest elements of snark was, I don't know what y'all think y'all gonna do in one day. Forgetting that, as many of us have learned recently, the Montgomery bus boycott started as a one-day boycott. And it was so successful, they kept it going for another day, and then another day, and then a week, and then a month. And then 380 days later, they ran the tables on the Montgomery busing system. And so that boycott that people participated in on Friday, which we talked about here on air, Friday was the economic boycott. But that's not the only thing. If you're following Reverend Jamal Bryant, he's got a whole plan. You've got a number of organizations that are joined on the NAACP. And we talked about the NAACP's press release over a week ago. They have been said, here are all the companies that are supporting the rollbacks and diversity, equity, inclusion. Stop buying there. So it's not just about that one day. It's about a FUBU forever, right? We're renewing our minds. We're asking ourselves before we spend anything, before we spend a dime, we're asking ourselves, where can I buy this same product that I need with a Black-owned business? And then we're going to the Black-owned business instead. However, there is an actual calendar that I want you all to be aware of. So February 28th was the first day of the economic blackout. March 7th through March 14th. That's supposed to be the Amazon boycott. Now, that's going to be a challenge for your sister friend. I am one of them people who claims to be very righteous, but I do shop a lot at Amazon. I do. I'm just going to own it because I know I'm not the only one out there. But March 7th through March 14th, it's an Amazon boycott. And I'm not going to do the thing that a lot of people suggest and buy all the stuff I need from Amazon on March 6th or wait until March 15th. I'm not buying from Amazon for that period. And then hopefully thereafter. March 21st to March 28th, there's a Nestle boycott. Okay, you see how this is rolling out. Nestle is led by a man who basically said water is not a human right. And if you Google Nestle or if you DuckDuckGo Nestle, because I'm trying to get off of Google. See, it's a process trying to get off of Google. If you research Nestle, you see that they have in their past and according to a lot of protesters in their present, a lot of business practices that are very harmful to Black and brown communities, particularly Black communities and brown communities in indigenous spaces where the products that are used to create chocolate are being mined and gathered and harvested in very inhumane ways. April 7th to April 14th. That's the Walmart boycott. April 18th, economic blackout part 2. Okay. April 21st to April 28th, a General Mills boycott. May 6th to May 12th, Amazon boycott part 2. May 20th to May 26th, Walmart boycott part 2. June 3rd to June 9th, Target boycott. And some of y'all are already doing all of this. June 24th to June 30th, McDonald's boycott. There's nothing happening on Juneteenth. Wait and see. July 4th, Independence Day boycott. So this is not about a one-day thing. This is about a multi-pronged effort and approach. And this is not even necessarily just a Black community thing. This is something that groups are glomming onto. They're adding their own spins to it. It's about sure that we're doing the work of using our dollars and our muscle to ensure that we are not going to basically, one, be made fools of, two, be taken advantage of, and three, support financially the companies and the institutions that are attempting in many significant ways to oppress and to destroy our ability to do the work of living vibrant and healthy lives. YouTube, appreciate y'all for popping in. And one more thing, YouTube, I said this to Urban View already. I meant to just say this at the beginning of the hour. I forgot. YouTube, y'all should know that there's a lot of things happening here in Urban View. But one of the things I'm very excited about is that today is the day that the podcast, Lurie Breaks It Down, has launched. I mean, I'm going to need my round of applause one more time. I'm going to need my round of applause. YouTube, y'all not going to hear it because y'all not connected to the system, but Urban View will hear it. They're applauding. They're applauding right now. But yes, yes, my podcast, Lurie Breaks It Down, is live. And if you are one of those people who have ever felt like there is, you hear a story and you're like, that can't just be all, that can't be all that they're talking about. You hear something out of history, some political conversation, something about a current event or some cultural issue. And you're like, there's got to be more to the story. That can't just be all that there is. Well, if that is you, and if you have had those thoughts and those concerns and have wanted to know what else is there behind this story, that's where this podcast comes, and that's where this podcast is going to help you out. In every episode, we are digging very deeply to understand and to fill in the knowledge gaps and to connect the dots around all of these issues that are impacting our world. I'm so excited about it. It will not have the same sort of confines that the live radio show has, the time constraints, the callers, and all the things we have to respond to. And it really is going to be short form, but long form. No more than 25, 30 minutes. That's it. No more. So you could do a workout and listen to the podcast. That's the idea. But the podcast is called Lurie Breaks It Down. You can listen now wherever you get your podcast. The first episode is out today. The trailer was out last week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share and rake it. Not rake it. I meant to say rank it and then rate it. And I combined the two into rake. What I mean is rank it number 5 stars. If you ain't got 5 stars, don't do nothing. I want 5 stars from everybody. Lurie Breaks It Down is the name of the podcast. I'm very excited about this. Let's get, YouTube, we got to go now because we got to take some calls. Amina, let's get our first caller on the line. Hold on. I missed my page. Let's go to Thomas in New York, who's a first-time caller. YouTube, appreciate y'all. Yes, we got to go. Thank you so much. Yes, you are on the air. Yes, hi.